London of News here in Melbourne on a beautiful sunny day, and I'm heading across to Colorado to speak to Andrew, who's got contacted me recently, and he's got some interesting stuff that he's doing over there on the side of liberty and freedom and the pursuit of used to be land, but it's happiness. So how's things going in Colorado, Andrew?
Fantastic. It's a little chilly here. It's in the 30s. I think it was 14 degrees this morning when we woke up. But yes, exciting things actually happening around the world in freedom and liberty. And even down in Aussie land, we've got some things going on, and excited to share a little bit with you and your viewers. And basically, what we're doing is something that we're calling equity jurisprudence or equity. And what is equity? Equity has been around for a couple thousand years, probably in the times of Rome, where the definition legally is justice by fair dealing. Now that word justice can be expanded to pretty much anything we do in our life because everything is commercial. We had a famous case here in the States, Erie Railroad versus Tompkins. After they took away the gold and the silver, the real money, they had to get rid of that common law. That's why you're doing what you're doing with the common law courts. And they had to try to merge this all into their Admiralty Maritime fictional statutory law. And they did their best, but they can't get rid of either one. They're still present, especially with equity. There's some maxims out there, and there's things that custom can supersede the common law. That's why you're doing your other, your private common law courts, is because their common law, they've taken case law and absorbed common law into it. But they can't do that with equity because it has to be fair. And equity knows that everything that they're doing is under color, fake, fiend, color of law. And they know there's no equity knows there's no lawful money on the planet, so we can't pay any public debt. I'm not saying private debts. Your neighbor loans you $100, you have to pay them back $100 because that their energy, their commercial energy produced that $100, worked for that $100. But a public debt, anything from a court, anything from a taxing authority, the government, anything from a bank. People think banks loan money. Banks don't loan money. There is no money. You have the power of the pen, and they use it. They use your commercial energy to loan you your own credit and call it a loan when they didn't loan you anything except maybe the pen to sign your name. So, equity provides remedy for any matter in commerce. And since everything's commercial, there can be a remedy. And it does it. I mean, I totally respect what you're doing by compelling the performance that the way that you're doing it. And if they don't like it, they need to retire or quit or resign. But we compel performance by asking the questions that compel that performance. We were attacked by the Department of Justice and IRS, which is the equivalent to your ATO. And because we're in what I called at the time patriot warfare, which is if you heard of secure party creditor processes and status correction and beating your chest, I'm not a taxpayer, all those things. They showed us they pretty much took everything we owned. We didn't know this equity jurisprudence at the time. And I was also arrested trying to do an adverse possession process, because we were on the verge of homelessness because we had everything taken, and was arrested, facing 12 years in prison. And I was learning equity at the time, but I used equity to have a judge with a doctorate degree in law here in the States say, case dismissed and all bonds are hereby discharged in this matter. So that woke me up to, instead of fighting them, be in honor with them, but not get walked on. So that's what I teach people how to do. Teach people how to be in honor in all aspects of your life without ever being walked on by anyone or any entity, government, ATO, courts, banks. There should be nobody homeless on this planet because they don't pay their mortgage, because their house was paid for at closing when they sat across from the banker or the title closer and sign that promissory note. That promissory note was deposited at like a check. The Federal Reserve calls it a transaction deposit. That's what you're doing when you write a check to somebody. It's a transaction deposit. So this is, equity knows all of this. Equity also knows that, they're using us. We are the chattel. We are the commercial energy that keeps the system going around the world. They're using us as commercial energy. Almost everything that we do. If there's an account number with a court, a bank, government, your tax identification number, all of that has been securitized, which means it's been an instrument is being traded on the open market in either in Australia or around the world. And this is how they're expanding the money supply and making millions and billions and trillions of dollars off of our commercial energy. And there's evidence out there that once an instrument has been securitized, like your mortgage, like your credit cards, like a court case, because of generally accepted accounting principles that operate around the world, once that's been securitized, the debtor and creditor positions no longer exist in that situation. So because of that, we can compel that performance by just like we had that conversation before we started recording about compelling performance. And we do it by asking questions instead of testifying, instead of fighting. Once you testify, you're there in a court under a general appearance. We appeared specially in a court, in their courts, which is done two reasons for a special appearance: to argue jurisdiction, which we don't do in most cases, simply because the judge and magistrates are bankers. That's one of the hats they wear. So they could, just like we talked about, they could make that case go away. They hold legal title to that case. They're the trustee of it. They could, with the stroke of a pen, make it go bye-bye. So we want them to have that power. We just compel that performance by asking the questions that would compel that performance. So, that's what we're teaching. We have students from around the world, from here, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, UK, a couple of Netherlands. Just got somebody writing that's going to be joining the class from Bulgaria. So this is something is spreading around the world. Equity will work in any country that has a constitution. Maybe not so much in North Korea, but pretty everywhere else we've found so far that we've helped people with it's working. Because it's our rights are granted to us by God, by our Creator, and universe, source, whatever you title or description you give that entity or that frequency. And the problem is the contracts that we've entered into throughout our life supersede those rights. Probably the first one that people enter into is the driver's license. Everybody's in a hurry to get behind that wheel. So at 16 or whatever the age is they sign the application for the driver's license. Yeah. And that they take a right and they convert it into a privilege. Now, I'm not saying everybody should give up their driver's license. Sometimes statutes are there because they work, and not everybody should be behind the wheel. But we have a right to travel on the common ways without asking their permission. And that's just the first contract. There's many, from bank loans to tax forms to checking accounts to you name it. All those contracts are what allow those creator granted rights to be superseded. So, and then the equity that we teach can be a remedy for that.
Yeah, a lot of those contracts, when you got your license, is an interesting point. You were never given full disclosure at the time because you didn't want it. You just wanted the license, but it comes under a unilateral mistake. At the time when you weren't given full disclosure, those contracts are void, so they have no standing. And another thing which is people never ask the question: when the country's in debt, and we're in debt here because we've got a Labour Party which has destroyed the country from 1973 on and removed the crown and stuff, and where we are an unlawful republic, and they kept it a really, really good secret. Who do we owe the money to? All this trillions of dollars, and nobody ever mentions the banks. What's your take on that
one? Sure. I mean, again, the banking system uses our commercial energy, i.e., our signatures, to keep the system running. Otherwise, again, they don't loan you anything. Banks don't loan anything. So who's the trillions of dollars, owed to? Well, actually, is it owed, or is it all just fiat? You know, you know, and we in our conversations beforehand, we were talking about Mr. Trump, and why he's probably pushing this digital things, because so they can create some digital currency to make the debt go away, because it's all a big fiction. There's case law that says governments can only deal with fictions. That's why they created that birth certificate with that all caps name, with the definition that's in Black's Law Dictionary, capitis diminutio maximus, which is a maximum loss of status, that to a slave. That's in Black's Law Dictionary. So they're telling us what they're doing to us, and the whole world's operating in a fiction, because governments are a fiction. They can only deal with fictions. They had to figure out a way to make us surety for a fiction. And the surety, by definition, is the one liable to pay, which goes back to our signatures, because we become the accommodation party. The accommodation party is when one is loaning their signature on a document. The nice part about that is it works both ways. How many signatures are on a court order that a judge or a magistrate signs? Just one, his or hers. So guess what? They just made themselves the accommodation party, which is, i.e., the surety, which is the one liable to pay if we bring equity, we properly do an acceptance on that judgment or that court order, return it to the magistrate or the judge, and their rules say that when the offer of presentment is returned, it creates a contractual obligation upon their part to settle and close the matter. So we turn it around and make them the one liable to pay. And obviously they're not going to, pay it, even though we can't pay for anything. The matter just poof goes away magically, like you said. Who do we owe the debt to? We don't owe it to anybody. We have the power of the pen just like they do. We just have to know how to do it properly. And again, our history in this, I've been in this space for 26 years. We've been through the fire. I call it experiential knowledge, not theoretical knowledge. Just like you've been there as well in experience, and because of that, we've learned how to do things right and how not to do things, because again, we've been through that fire. And so it's important for people to learn how to do it right. There is so much disinformation out there, and they may be putting a lot of it out too, because I don't know where you stand on status correction. We did status correction, and to me that's what helped us lose everything. You can't copyright that all caps name. You didn't create it, and there's so many people still out there pushing that. And just think about it. How can you copyright something that you didn't create? We didn't create that all caps name. They did. We didn't create the estate. They created the estate. What name is at the top of your birth certificates? The state of. And so they hold legal title to that that fiction of law. We hold equitable title, and we're using it under the law of usufruct, where you're using somebody else's property for your benefit, and you're supposed to return it to them in as good or better condition when you're done using it. Well, most of us don't do that, but it's still, we hold equitable title to that name so we can use it. Just like your car. When you register your vehicle, it's got the license plate on the back of it. Why can they come tow it? Well, think about that. You registered it. Anytime you register something, you're giving up partial title to it. So the state owns legal title to that vehicle. We hold equitable title to it, so we can drive it, we can wash it, we can put fuel in it, we can change the oil, we can sell it, we can put new tires on it. But if let the meter run out, or park it someplace that they don't want you to, they're going to tow it away, and that's why. So again, do our vehicles need to be registered? Well, there's ways around that as well, pretty much around the world. And the problem is you have to do both. You can't just give up your driver's license and operate a vehicle. It still has the tag on it, because there's contracts. And again, it goes back to that contract thing. Everything is the contracts. And as you said, the contracts being void, in Black's Law Dictionary, we use three major books, four books total: Black's Law Dictionary, sixth edition; Burton's Legal Thesaurus, fourth edition; Levine's Manual on Commercial Law, which he was a New York CPA attorney back in the late in the 30s and 40s, who realized that when they took the gold and the silver away, we couldn't pay for anything. And obviously, we use the Bible a little bit as well, because a lot of the maxims of equity come from the New Testament in the Bible. So we use those to bring equity, to compel the performance that we want to happen. And doing it without arguing, without testifying, is just, it resonates a lot more with people than the fighting and the arguing and testifying and trying to use their laws. Their laws are copyrighted. Their UCC, their Uniform Commercial Code, that's a copyrighted code. So a lot of people are writing UCC 1-308 above their signatures. Well, UCC 1-308 tells us what to write instead of using their copyrighted code. It says, all rights reserved without prejudice. So that's what I teach to write instead of using, their codes. Equity is a higher vibration, a higher frequency, both on the physical 3D, three-dimensional level, as well as the spiritual level. And that's why it resonates so much with people, to compel performance. If it comes down to having to, bring a suit, then, I totally agree with what you're doing with the common law courts, is to, if they're not going to cognize and equitize or acknowledge, the commercial energy that we're being honorable and giving them, then by golly, take them to court.
Well, yeah, it's basically causing harm, loss, and injury. And common law is humanity, caution, and prudence. So on the other side is harm, loss, and injury. So if they're causing harm, loss, and injury by their actions, whether they're lawful or not, they have to pay that. There's a penalty to be paid. So the penalty is go before a grand jury, and then the grand jury indicts or doesn't indict. And then if they indict, they go before a jury, and then the jury make the decision on the penalty as well. But that's how we do it. But the American system it's a common law court, and the sheriffs, some of the constitutional sheriffs seems to be the ones that are upholding the law, but unfortunately they have to enforce statute laws as well. Is that correct? Well, I've been there. I've been with a few of the sheriffs over the years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you're exactly right. Even a constitutional sheriff, the courts here are not constitutional courts unless you get up to a very high, Article 3 federal court or higher. Those are the only constitutional courts. In fact, I asked the judge who was threatening me with 12 years in prison, under what authority over here? And his answer was under state legislative authority. Now, they take an oath of office to uphold the constitutions of the states and the United States, but they're not. These are administrative commercial courts, around the world. Again, it's everything. They're all commerce. Every court case, you can go to have someone with a Series 7 license and pull the CUSIP on it, where, what's a CUSIP number? It's a number assigned by Global CUSIP Services, i.e. the banking world, to track every security on this planet. And if you have a court case from a traffic case up, that case has been securitized. It's being traded on the open markets in Australia or whatever country that you're in, and they're making money on the back end, millions and billions of dollars off of these court cases. It's not about fines. I mean, when's the last time you heard we have to raise taxes to build a new courthouse, or to give the judges and prosecutors raises? No. They're sending documents to the ATO to get paid directly. The IRS, the ones here are sending documents, 1099s, to the IRS to get, because the accounts have been abandoned. So they have ways of making that money making that way. Then they receive a remainderment on the bonds that are running. In any court case, there's at least 3 bonds. If it's criminal, there's 4 to 5 bonds running, and they can run for years. So, that's why some of these cases get drawn out for so long, because they're just sitting there. The bonds are being traded, and they're raking in the funds. So, that's why, there's maxims out there they're supposed to be obeying, like you mentioned, quick justice. What was the other one? I can't remember what you were just talking about, but there's maxims that apply. So yes, and again, goes back to the contracts. And what equity tells us to do is if we've entered into a contract by mistake, we have the equitable right of rescission. And if you look up rescission in Black's law, it says it's a long definition, but it basically says the unmaking of a contract from the beginning, not merely a termination. So we have, and it's nothing to do with this 72-hour or 3-day right of rescission. It doesn't matter how long you sign something. If you sign something and there's a proper legal cause, which the legal cause we use is mistake. If you made a mistake signing something 20 years ago, you have the equitable right of rescission.
Yeah.
So if there's something, some tax document you signed a long time ago and it's necessary to rescission it, we have that equitable right. And most of the time, it's not necessary because in equity, we don't argue the facts, law, jurisdiction, or venue. We give them we say, if there's charges simply need to be discharged. It's all commerce. So we give them the commercial energy to discharge the charge. Just like if you go out to dinner, you have dinner, you eat, and you get the bill. I don't know why some places they call it the check. but but they give you the bill and then you discharge it either with Australian dollars or plastic or a check or something, but you're discharging it, you're not paying it. We can't pay for any public debt. And so those Australian dollars are a note, they're evidence of a debt. If you look up the definition of money in the law dictionary, it says coins of currency, for exchange, but excludes bonds, notes, and evidences of debt. Well, the American money says Federal Reserve note at the top of it. So that's strike one. It has signatures on it. So does yours. So that's a bond. And both of those are evidences of a debt. So 3 strikes and the currency you have in your purses and wallets do not fit the definition of money, at which they've taken that away, in around 1933 around the world. And with the gold, when they took away the gold and the silver, and they gave us a fiat fiend currency. Now, I'm not saying that those Australian dollars in your purses and wallets don't have value. Obviously, they can be exchanged for goods and services, but they can't pay a public debt. They can only discharge a public debt. And that's where the remedy is in any commercial matter, is we can give them the commercial energy with this pen. Your signature is likely the most valuable asset you'll ever own if you learn how to use it properly.
That's a good one.
And
I like that. I like that analogy. The signature is everything is down to signatures. So in a nutshell, if your fines and stuff, I like that aspect. You get a fine from the magistrate here. They call magistrates here. You actually accept it and then send it back to them. How do you explain? How do you get them to pay? That's a good. I like that one.
sure, your signature returning, if they give you a fine for 500 Australian dollars, they've given you the 500 to pay what we can't pay because there's no lawful money. So the word acceptance is a banking term around the world. When you write a check to somebody, they take it to their bank accepts it and sends it back to the other bank so the digits transfer. So it's an acceptance. If you look on a bank's website, many of them, list liabilities, and one of those liabilities will be acceptances. So we're just taking advantage of that system, but instead of arguing it, we're just giving them the commercial value to discharge the debt. So if the judge gives you a fine for $500 and we return it to them, magistrates wear more than one hat. They have a magistrate hat, they have a banker hat, they have a priest hat. That's why these Bibles in the courtrooms. So we can use those 3 hats to compel that performance. And when we return that $500 fine to them, accepted with our signature on it, with proper notice, and that's the important thing. You're not going to learn this at YouTube University, okay? We have a course that we teach. I have an Australian equity course that I teach. I teach it for around the world, and I have a specific one just for Australia. But if they wanted to, and it's not our job to teach them the law, but the judge or the clerk of the court, who's actually another part of that banking system, can take that commercial energy and send it to the Treasury, the Australian Treasury, and receive those 500 digits into their accounts if they wanted to. Now, again, it's not our job to teach them how to do that. It's our job to bring equity, give them the commercial energy, and if they can't figure it out, that's their problem. It's not our job to teach them the law. We don't want to be accused of practicing law without a license, even though there is no license to practice law. It's just that there's a big club and we ain't in it, as George Carlin used to say. So, but yeah, that's the basis of it. And this is why it resonates with a lot of people around the world, is because there's no arguing, there's no fighting. We give them the commercial energy. If they don't recognize our equity, the honor that we're giving them, then yes, there's commercial ways of putting them into commercial dishonor. Just like a bank would, is if you stop sending them a check for your credit card every month, they're going to put you into commercial dishonor. Well, we can do the same thing. And because again, we're just using their rules and their system to play the game, because there's no money. It's monopoly.
Yeah,
It
that
just
that
has
honor,
value.
the honor thing is very important. A lot of people go into court and they start an argument, and they argue and argue, and it's rubbish. It's their sandpit. You got to play the game with their rules, and if you don't know the rules, then you can't play the game. And I say to people, learn the rules, play by the rules, don't upset anybody. Use honey instead of vinegar, and use the rules against them, and they will play ball. If you ask a magistrate, a decent magistrate, for a remedy, the remedy is just the case because of the prosecution has no case. I mean, it's pretty simple, but that's life. So whereabouts? How can we people? I'll put the link up on the YouTube when we put it up. Do you run Zoom meetings or something to teach people around the world, or how do you contact them?
Website's freedomwithequity.com, freedomwithequity.com. And there's information there. If you join as a private member, you can have a 15-minute call with me for me to answer any questions for you. I hold a 12-week course. It may go to 13 weeks because I'm actually including a court practice sessions into it. We had one a couple weeks ago, and it worked really well for some people that have court this month in our forum. We've got over 300 people in the current class equity Telegram forum. Most of those are alumni who have been through the ringer, from January 6th defendants to just people that are just trying to be free. And that's what we're talking about, is freedom. So it's a 12-week course. We just started one. We have session 2 starting tomorrow. And so it's not too late for people to join if you feel inspired to do so. But we run them every 14 to 16 weeks for 12 weeks at a time on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Sydney time. And that's 2 o'clock in the morning for me here in Colorado, but that's fine. My vision is to get this information spread around the world. It's not inexpensive. It is, we've been through the ringer, and the fruits of our labor. This is a life-changing course, and so for me to learn this, I had to travel around the United States, meeting with different people to put all those pieces of the puzzle together, and that's what I've done. So we were broke when we needed to learn this. We sold stuff, we got sponsors, we borrowed, and we did, took over 25,000 US dollars to be able for me to travel and learn this around the country. And that was not what we spent, another 60, 70,000 US dollars on all that Patriot warfare stuff that just got, everything taken from us, and me facing 12 years in prison. So with the equity, it's completely peaceful, it's honorable, and that's what we teach. So it's a couple 3 hours every Wednesday evening, Sydney time, and go to freedomwithequity.com and be happy to speak with you and give you more information on it.
So look, it's been fantastic talking. Thank you for contacting me, and look, we have to fight back, and it's got to be done politely and correctly, rather than arguing and creating nothing but chaos in courts. I mean, they are. I call them the new state bank, but I mean, I've always called them that, but they have to make money too, and it's a business. So, and everything's in Australia is privatized, and it's probably the same in America. And a lot of always something always amazes me. You get the Bar Association to register the District Corporation of London, which is one of the three independent countries. In the States, quickly before we retire, do they take an oath to the Constitution in the States? Because our Constitution doesn't apply to private companies because they privatize everything in the Constitution has been put aside. But in the States, you're lucky you have the amendments. But do the Bar Association take another oath? And where is their allegiance? Is it to the Bar Association and the District Corporation of London, or is it to the US Constitution? Where does that lie?
Well, again, their oath of office is supposed to be to the United States Constitution, but their loyalty, as you just mentioned, is to the Bar Association. So it's double-edged sword to where, yes, they stay. There's an oath to the Constitution, but the problem is the courts have been privatized here, even though they're done under state legislation, which is they're mini-me's of the U.S. corporation. But again, even the United States is a corporation. It's registered in Delaware, just like the ATO, is registered in Washington, D.C. So it's all privatized. It's all banking. It's all commercial. And so yes, they're supposed to take an oath, but they don't abide by it because it's all about contract. And like you said, everybody goes in to argue. You're violating my rights. No, you have a contract. You signed a contract on your driver's license application to obey the rules of the road. So what's your argument?
Yeah.
So that's the problem. So instead of arguing those false things, go to peace, give them the commercial energy, and that's our goal. Is we just want to be left alone. Let us live our lives. There's no lawful taxes on the planet, in my opinion. Even if they put a bill in front of you, the ATO, it's dischargeable with equity. Just give them the commercial energy. Go away. Let me live in peace. That's our creator-given right. Is to live in peace, and that's all we want to do. We're not trying to get rich. We're not trying to access the public side of the private side of the ledger like some of these people are out there doing. Trying to take advantage, to take control of the minor estates. I'm not interested in any of that. I just want to be left alone. Let me live my life in peace, and I'll leave you alone. And if they ever try to knock on my door or something, the building inspector knocks on the door because we put a shed, without asking their permission, Equity's going to have our back and, give them the commercial energy to go back and go away and leave us alone. So that's what it's about.
Sounds pretty good. Okay, Andrew, thanks very much. We'll definitely chat again soon, and I'll catch up with you. Anyway, London News signing off. Thanks, Andrew, and bye for now.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.